The crystalline throne room of Zephyria stretched impossibly high, its walls humming with bioluminescent patterns that shifted like living constellations. Oliver stood at the chamber's entrance, his worn combat boots somehow still carrying the red dust of Mars, a stark contrast to the pristine floors that seemed woven from starlight itself. He had traveled 3 galaxies to reach this moment. Queen Lena sat upon the eternal throne, her form simultaneously delicate and formidable. Her skin shimmered with the characteristic iridescence of the Zephyrian royal bloodline, and her eyes, those magnificent violet eyes, held the wisdom of 17 generations of monarchs. The crown upon her head wasn't merely decorative, it was a living neural interface, connecting her to every consciousness in her vast empire. The court held its collective breath. Never in the 10,000-year history of the Zephyrian Empire had a human stood before the eternal throne. Humans were curious creatures, yes, resourceful, certainly, but they were also considered primitives, barely having mastered faster-than-light travel while the Zephyrians had been folding space for millennia. Oliver had proven them all wrong. 6 months ago, the Void Plague had swept through the Outer Rim territories, a quantum pathogen that consumed matter at the molecular level. It had devoured 12 colony worlds before Zephyrian science could even identify its nature. Their greatest minds had failed. Their most advanced technology had crumbled before it. Then came the human. Oliver hadn't arrived with fanfare or impressive credentials. He'd come in a battered salvage ship called the Defiant Hope, accompanied only by his AI companion and a datapad filled with equations that made Zephyrian scientists weep with their elegant simplicity. He'd studied the plague for 72 hours straight, surviving on what he called coffee, a bitter human stimulant that would have poisoned most species. His solution had been audacious. Instead of fighting the plague's quantum nature, he'd suggested they embrace it. Using principles from human quantum mechanics and a dash of what he termed educated stubbornness, Oliver had developed a counter-frequency that didn't destroy the plague but convinced it that it was already successful, causing it to enter a dormant state. It had worked. 17 billion lives saved by a single human's refusal to accept the impossible. Now, as per ancient Zephyrian law, the queen herself would bestow honors upon the savior of her people. The court expected a title, perhaps a modest estate on one of the pleasure moons. Some whispered that he might even receive citizenship, an almost unthinkable honor for an outsider. Oliver approached the throne with measured steps, his breathing steady despite the gravity of the moment. The court officials watched with barely concealed disdain. Even saved by a human, they struggled to see him as anything but inferior. His clothing was simple, a worn jacket over a faded shirt bearing symbols from something called MIT. His hair was unkempt. He carried no weapons, no symbols of status. He was so very utterly human. When he reached the base of the throne, Oliver did something that shocked every witness in the chamber. He knelt. Not in the Zephyrian manner, one knee bent, head bowed at precisely 30 degrees, but in the ancient human tradition, both knees on the ground, head lowered in complete submission. The court gasped. Such a gesture was reserved only for Oliver Chen of Earth. Queen Lena's voice resonated through the chamber, amplified by the neural crown. You have saved our people when we could not save ourselves. You have shown us that wisdom is not measured in years of civilization, but in the courage to see what others cannot. She rose from her throne, and the court fell into stunned silence. A Zephyrian monarch never left the eternal throne during a formal ceremony. Never. Lena descended the crystalline steps, her robes flowing like liquid mercury. As she approached Oliver, something impossible happened. Her formal expression cracked, replaced by something the court had never witnessed on their stoic queen's face. She smiled. Not the diplomatic curve of lips required at state functions, but a genuine, radiant smile that made her seem less like an ancient monarch and more like the young woman she still was beneath the crown. 6 months ago, Lena said softly. Her voice now meant only for Oliver, though the entire court strained to hear. You saved my people. But 3 years before that, on a diplomatic mission to Earth, you saved something far more precious to me. Oliver raised his eyes, and those who stood close enough saw tears streaming down his weathered face. You saved me from drowning in protocol and duty, Lena continued. You showed me that love could exist even between stars. You asked me a question then, one I couldn't answer while wearing this crown. But I can answer it now. She reached down, taking his calloused hands in her luminescent ones. Rise, my husband, she said, her voice carrying across the chamber with absolute authority. Rise, king consort of Zephyria. Rise, my partner in all things, as we promised each other beneath Earth's moon. The court erupted. Advisors shouted. Nobles fainted. Guards reached for weapons before remembering there was no enemy to fight. But Oliver rose, and as he did, Lena removed a second crown from the folds of her robes, one forged specifically for this moment. It was simpler than hers, made from Terran metals mixed with Zephyrian crystal, a union of two worlds. You tricked me, Oliver said, his voice breaking with emotion. I needed you to save my people as yourself, Lena replied. Not as the person trying to impress his secret fiancé. Your stubborn human brilliance works best when you're being authentically infuriating. She placed the crown upon his head, and something remarkable happened. The neural interface didn't reject him. Instead, it adapted, rewriting centuries of programming to accommodate human neurology. Oliver gasped as he suddenly felt the consciousness of billions, every Zephyrian in the Empire, their hopes, their fears, their gratitude flooding through him. I can feel them, he whispered. Now you understand, Lena said. This is what it means to rule, to carry every soul as if it were your own. I'm not ready for this. No one ever is. But you're human, Oliver. Your species has a gift for doing the impossible simply because you're too stubborn to accept limitations. The High Chancellor approached, his face purple with rage. This is unprecedented, illegal. A human cannot. A human already did. Lena cut him off, her voice sharp as quantum steel. He did what we could not. He saw solutions where we saw only endings. And if our laws cannot accommodate the person who saved us all, then our laws are worthless. Oliver turned to face the court, and despite his simple clothing and tear-stained face, something had changed. The crown had awakened something, not power, but purpose. I know what you think of humans, he said, his voice steady. We're young, reckless, we barely understand the universe we inhabit. But we also dream bigger than our limitations. We reach for stars we can't yet touch, and when someone we love is drowning, whether in water or in duty, we dive in without hesitation. He looked at Lena, and his expression softened. Your queen taught me that. 3 years ago, when she visited Earth as a diplomat, she was drowning in the weight of an empire. I pulled her out of the ocean that day, but she pulled me out of a life lived alone. She taught me that love doesn't care about species or status. It just is. The High Chancellor opened his mouth to object again, but a younger noble stepped forward. Princess Kira, Lena's cousin. He's right, Kira said quietly. We've lived so long that we forgot how to live. Maybe we need someone who still remembers how to dream. One by one, the court nobles knelt, not in submission, but in acknowledgement. The human had done more than save their lives. He'd reminded them what it meant to be alive. Lena took Oliver's hand, their fingers intertwining, human and Zephyrian flesh and light. Together? She asked. Together, he confirmed. Even if I have no idea what I'm doing. Especially because you have no idea what you're doing. That's when humans are most dangerous. She pulled him close, and as they kissed, the throne room's bioluminescent walls exploded into colors never before seen in Zephyrian history. The building itself seemed to celebrate, as if the ancient structure recognized that something fundamental had shifted. The human had knelt before the queen, but he rose as so much more. A bridge between worlds, a symbol that the universe was far larger and more wondrous than any single species could imagine. And in the years that followed, as King Consort Oliver Chen and Queen Lena ruled together, the Zephyrian Empire learned something their 10,000 years of civilization had never taught them. That sometimes the greatest strength comes not from ancient wisdom, but from the stubborn, impossible, magnificent courage of those who still believe in hope. Humanity had joined the cosmic stage not with weapons or conquest, but with love and brilliance and that characteristic human refusal to accept that anything was truly impossible. The universe would never be the same.